What's up, dudes? Sunday. Let's do some Sunday coding. I never do coding on Sunday, but this week is different. Me being on vacation. I am down and out because of my back, so I really can't do much else. Start my timer here. Alright, so let's just jump right in. We were continuing implementation of the game attribute lock logic. We made really good progress. We stopped at line 45 and things to do. Yesterday was actually a really productive day. It was one of my best days in a while once I got going. So it's really good progress. So we stopped here. We finished clickable card list and clicked cards list, and we did test it. But just to be safe, we're gonna do a quick game test. So we're gonna CD to the main, and CD stands for change directory. We're changing the directory of our terminal, and now we're gonna run the server script, and now we're running the two client scripts. So we are online, connected to our server. Looks like we encountered the waiting other player bug. I am not worried about it right now. I know I always say that, but I'm really not. So J and then M. I was actually hoping that that bug would get fixed through the implementation of the locks, but I think that we added the game state lock already, and that was what I was hoping would have fixed that waiting other player bug, but it looks like it didn't. So unfortunately that bug still does exist even after we added that lock in, because it is an intermittent issue. It only happens like 1 out of 30 times, which it's not a constant bug. It's something that's only happens every now and then, which means it has to do with like some sort of data exchange problem. Alright, so clickable card list looks like it's working, but we don't know about clicked cards list, because when all those draw animation cards were rolled out along the screen in the staggered diagonal position, that was for those were all in clickable card list. Now we're gonna see if clicked card list is working as it should. Yeah, see, something's up with the progression text though. Yeah, something's up with the progression text, because that was some wacky progression text. That was kind of wacky. Weird. It was telling me that I picked a 3, but that was talking about when during the draw animation way earlier. So I don't know why. I don't know what's up with that. So there's clickable card list and click card list. Alright, so now we click play. Alright, yeah, so the click card list and the clickable card list all works. And yeah. Okay, and we wanted to test wildcard handler, remember that, because we modified it. keep the red with the red. Okay, so it looks like wildcard handler is working. So far, anyway. So this should actually let us meld. This should like go through. This should. Okay, yeah, that's bugged. That actually should have melded. So we already have that in things to do. Okay, so it looks like it's working, but we'll stop right there and let's go to things to do. And I think I put this in pressing issues already. What is it that I'm looking for exactly? Not wildcard handler. Oh, round score. Or is it round score? Let's see. So def meld requirement. Requirements. Add in a display text box for meld requirements that there knows. Play cards. I'm trying to think of what I would have titled it. Test wildcard handler network. Try no. Okay, so it's none of this. It might be in pressing issues. So this bug, search project list, regular versus reentrant, enter continue text function, re-enable sound, proper cleanup. Other player cards invisible. No, it's not there. Maybe it's in bugs debug. Let me see. Because I know that value play cards bug. Here we go. Yeah, I put value. This is actually the score is calculated including all cards in the hand instead of only the cards left in the play cards. So this should be titled meld requirement. Meld requirement round player score. Cards handbug. Yeah, that's a good name for it, I guess. Whatever. So let me just put that I encountered this again. 624 encountered this bug again. Definitely is not calculating the player's score correctly. Alright, so we'll worry about that another time. I'm gonna finish what I was already working on, which was the implementation of the game object lock logic. So we left off right there. So now we need to do skeleton clicked card and text input active. So this one is like clickable card list and clicked cards list in that it needs to be modified such that we're locking the non-skeleton versus the skeleton. I don't think we need to lock the skeleton. We need to lock the actual. So let's just check that. Okay, so this is for when we receive. No, that's a different attribute. Here we go, right here. So this is when we receive skeleton click card. We set the adder. Okay, so the setter of the actual clicked card gets called, not the skeleton. So it's just like before, I think, where, well, I don't even have to pull up paint. I already know it works like the same. We set the adder of the actual non-skeleton in dir check receive on the client thread, and then we will modify it or access it on the main thread so that we have to lock it, the actual, not the skeleton. So if we just look up clicked card instead, as long as we find one location, alright, there we go. So it's modified in event handler, which is client side, and as long as there's one location that accesses it. Yep, there we go. Alright, so let's, yeah, we need to modify the actual, not the skeleton. So let's go here, get rid of this, and then we're going to change this to say clicked card instead of skeleton clicked card. Now we're going to say if changed attribute list .ss or cs is equal to ss with self dot clicked card so I actually haven't made this lock yet. Clicked card lock has not been made. Is that true? Oh, it's going to be called skeleton clicked card lock. There we go. Alright, so let's go back to 624. And we're doing with self-click card lock. We're gonna return self-click card. Now we can copy this. Change this to say else. Elif CS. And then no lock. And we just return. So let's review. So we have click card, the getter, check for SS with clicked card lock, which is the proper lock, return internal value, else CS operation, return internal use. Now we have the setter. Click card. What we're going to do is create a core function which takes self val. Then we're going to copy the div. We're going to put the div right here. All this is going to get indented inside of that function. Then we're going to check for SSCS with clicked card lock. We're gonna then call core function passing in self val. We can copy this else, which is same as saying elif CS no lock core func. There we go. So let's review. We have the click card setter. We define the core func takes self val. Then we have all this code which is normally executed in the function. And let me just undo to make sure the indentation didn't get messed up, because that does happen. Well, that happens with copy and paste. I didn't actually copy and paste, so I didn't really need to check that. But yeah, all this is inside a core func. Then at the same indent level as the core func definition, SS check, use the clicked card lock, which is the correct lock. We then call core func self val else CS. Then we call core func with no lock. Okay, so that should do that. That should be done. So we can go back over here and say click card is yep, that should be it. Okay, and then the last one is text input active. Just put right here is current instead of not done, so we know that's the one we're working on. Okay, so text input active is not a property, it is just an attribute. Let's see how many times we check it to see if we need to turn it into one. So we have one. Well, this is actually client side, so we don't need to worry about those. Okay, so it's only 3 locations, so yeah, we're not going to convert that one to property. We'll just leave it as it is, as a regular attribute. So this one does need a lock though. So we'll say with game object dot text input active lock. Change that. And then same thing here. We're not going to use the context. Okay, so we have, review this real quick. Text final lock acquire, and then we have, yeah, we're gonna have to do the same thing with the text input active lock. We're gonna have to acquire it. We have to be careful here. I don't want to mess this up. Object text input active. Okay. So I can then release the text input active immediately. Okay, and then in the else, we also have to add that line, because if it doesn't enter into the if, we still have to release that lock. Okay, so this should be good. We have the text input active lock acquisition. We release it immediately after if we go into the if, and then else we release it. Alright, and then same thing here. This is basically the same code. So we then would acquire the text input active immediately after. Okay, and then release the text input active immediately after. We acquire it, then we check it. We also check input text final, that's why we have to acquire that lock. Then we immediately release both of them in the case we enter the if, else we do the same thing. text input active lock, release, input text final, lock, release, and then else we have the same thing. Okay. Alright, that's it. Okay. Yeah, that was a little bit more complicated than the properties. So we finished this. We're done here. Yep. Should be done. And let me just make sure that was all of the transferred adders. So we have choose multiple cards, click card active, enter continue text active, game state, input text final, multiple choice text active, text 1 and 2, progression text, selected choice, skipping round in, winner sound bool, clickable and clicked cards list, clicked card, and text input active. And that is indeed all the ones that we had listed. So we're done. Alright, so now we're moving on to the next, which is triple check. Okay, so that we do need to do. This would apply to non-property adders, such as game dot. Let's see. Let's change this. Verified must transfer. Verified why is it So this is going to apply to input text final, selected choice, It's not gonna. It would apply, could apply to this. It depends if this is a calculated property. Did we change it? Because we changed one of them to a calculated property. Okay, input text final is not a calculated property. Why? So this is in, why is it not showing the function like it usually does up here? This is inside of event handler, but why isn't it showing that? Why is it all white? What did I do? I messed something up because it's showing, it's not the right color. Something's wrong. What did I do? I messed something up. Let's see where the color changes. Right here. Yeah, see, something happened. It's blue. So it's blue right now. And then zoom back down. Okay, so it's still blue. Something's wrong though, because it's not. I don't think it's the right color. I messed something up somehow. Oh, I see what I did. I see. I gotcha. Multi-cursor, I messed this up. I removed that closing parentheses for this tuple. Where's that? Oh, I see. It's I messed this up here. So let's hit enter and then close this. So now we should be back to this. There, now it's working. So this should be verified, don't need lock, since only runs, yes. So input text final is not calculated property, which means input text final may be handled indirectly, like basically we would handle this attribute in dir check receive through an indirect namespace, meaning we're not going to actually explicitly write out input text final for that section. We would use like an if else, and the else might encompass it. So for instance, this is checking adder name string, if elif adder name string, and then eventually we get down to else, which encompasses all the other adder name strings that were not listed in the if elif. So like this right here would include all other adder name string instances, which may include adders such as input text final, and it probably does. So let's see. I did put though, if it's in the time tube, this tells you which one it handles. But I feel like I missed one of these. Selected choice. No, selected choice was in the time tube. Okay. I thought I missed one of them. Like when I wrote all this out, that one of these was not accounted for, meaning that I, wouldn't take into account during this refactoring that I would need to look for the else clause that handles it and implement code that explicitly uses that adder's lock to make sure it's locked as it should be. Getting a piece of gum real quick. Alright, let's keep on going. So input text final is, we need to add in code that uses the lock associated with these non-property adders, such as input text final, selected choice, and one of these though got changed because I remember I changed it. So it wasn't input text final. Let's see if it was selected choice. Okay, so it was selected choice. We changed selected choice to a property. Yep. Alright, so let's go back to client. This is no longer gonna be a non-calc prop. This is now a calc prop, so we need to change that. Okay, move this over. And okay, so now we have to check text input active. Text input active, I believe, is still a regular attribute. Yep, it is. Okay. So these are the two: input text final and text input active. So let's add it right here. Really don't need to do this, but encompasses these adders: input text final and then text input active. Alright, so let's do that. And by doing that, I mean we have to add in logic here into dir check receive into this section, which grabs the lock. Now it says this one only handles the name attribute for the else clause, so we should only have to add it here into this if, which means we would need it right here. No, wrong. We wouldn't need it there because that's for getting the attribute time stamp. That's not the actual attribute. Okay, but we do use it here. So this is a prerequisite section that gets run, and then this section gets run associated with it. So this would include those two adders, which are not going to be locked through a property setter or getter, which means we have to add in explicit logic here, which does acquire that lock. So we don't need it here, and we don't need it here at this line. Yeah, we don't need a lock for that line, but we don't need to use associated outer locks prior to this line, since they're acquired in setters, but that's only for properties. So this is actually a conditional, that was a conditional comment, and it shouldn't really be there. So, oh, well, this is a conditional section. This is actually correct, because line will always actually and for the else. Now this one is wrong, because this else section is only gonna apply to non-properties, aka regular attributes that don't have getters and setters. So this is not correct, that comment. We do need to use the lock here. And since there's only two of them, we can just add logic which says if adder name string is in, and then we'll put text input active, and then there's the second one, we'll put that one second since it's second, and the first one would be input text final, and they are in string format, so this is the correct format to have them in a string. So if adder name string is in input text final and text input active, because those two are not going to be considered properties, then I'm going to put a custom logger traceback print log function just to prove that this section works. If this line logs, then this logic is correct. Good job. And I'm just adding that as a simple test log to see if I'm pretty sure this is correct. I just want to make sure, so we're gonna log it because this should apply to only properties and this else should apply to non-properties, and the comment does verify that if attribute is not a property we can directly set the attribute, but we do need to use the lock. Okay, so I forgot to add that in. We then need to say we need to figure out which lock it is, so we can say if adder name string is equal to input text final, then we would acquire the lock. But how do we acquire the lock? Well, through cur_game, because we always receive in terms of 1 to 1 and 2 to 2. So we know that we would be using the proper. Oh yeah, well since this function gets run on both the client side and the server side, we would actually need to check the to see if this is being run server side. We only want this to get executed server side. So what we'll do is first we'll check if change attribute list ss or cs is equal to ss. Only in that case would we run this, and then we'll have an else, which is the same as saying elif such and such cs. We'll then set the adder without grabbing a lock. But if we are ss, we check the adder name string, and we could do an and. We could do and, so we'll just do like this. If change attribute list ss and adder name string in input text final input text active, we then log, then the logic is correct. So then we check the adder name string exactly, and then we would grab the input text final lock out of acquire. And well, actually we can just say with cur_game input text final lock, set the adder, and then else, which is the same as saying elif adder name string is equal to text input active. We would then use the text input active lock to set the adder there. So I'm pretty sure we did that correctly. Let's review. So we have else handling non-property adders. We then check ss and the adder name string. It will break out if it's cs before it hits the second section of the and. We check for input text final, text input active, and those are the two non-calc properties that would be handled by this section. Stupid scroll wheel on my mouse doesn't work anymore. And then we have a success log. We check the adder name string equality with input text final, which is spelled correctly. We then would use the input text final lock to, oops, and I forgot my colon right there. Then we'll set the adder. So I'm actually forgetting to put my discount double check verification here. Text input active with the cur_game input text final lock. We would then set that adder else, which is when we're handling text input active. We would then use the text input active lock. I also forgot the colon there. We would then use that to set the adder. And else for CS operation, we just set that adder straight up without using any lock. Okay. So that handles those two, but we need to remember that this would apply to this might apply. This else clause right here encompasses not only game attributes, but it encompasses all attributes here. So skeleton player data, prior face-up discard. Yeah, all this stuff. Yeah. Okay. So we need to make sure that we check this for player, deck, locations, etc. So we can get rid of this. Yeah, we don't need reentrant locks for any of this stuff. Okay, so we did that. Now we need what is this? Location? Locations. Alright, so let's go in order here. Let's minimize this. Collapse that. Alright, so now we're gonna look at our explore and we're gonna go in order. So we need card, change attribute list. Is there a way that I can like just look at them and write them down? Because I'm just gonna go one by one through them again to triple check all this. We'll say card, change attribute list is not a class, so we don't need to worry about that. Client, I guess we need to check that, right? Custom append list is a class. I don't think we'll figure it out. I'll just to be safe. Custom logger is not a class, but custom time list is. Then deck, game is done, so I'll just write. I'll just leave game here and just say done. Locations is actually next. Then network. And network is a class actually, but we're not gonna have any there. I'll just put it anyway. Then we have player. Change this to say player. And progression is no class. Server. Technically we need to check that. And setup is not a class. Alright, so we're gonna start at the top here. Review object shared or not. Okay, so card. Let's jump into card. Just go over here. Let's close all these and open up card. And what we're doing is we're reviewing all objects adders to determine if they are shared, meaning that they need locks. So let's look here. We have transferred adders. Alright, ID, rank, suit, change from dir check. Oh, that's non-transferred adders. I'm tripping. So the three that are transferred is display layer, X, and Y. So we might actually need setters for these. I mean, not setters. We might actually need the lock implementation for these. We very well may. Let's see. So let's look up display layer. Control Shift F. And I'll just do what I did before. We're going to copy the whole list. And I'm trusting these lists to be complete. I'm trusting those lists. Okay. So we're gonna multiply our cursor and get rid of this extra stuff. How did that work? My triple cursor went away. Alright, so let's do display layer. So it's well, no, it's not actually. So it's got a setter and a getter, okay. There goes my timer. Alright, I'm gonna take a little break. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, we're back. Let's do this. Oh man. Alright, so we're checking display layer to see if it is needing a lock. Alright, so it's got the setter. We change it in update. Update is run only in draw window main. Pretty certain. I think. So we have card sprite grid update. Yeah, this isn't draw window main, right? So that's safe. That's only going to be client side. Then we have so only when data transfer is true will it try to transfer this data. So us changing, setting the display layer here is going to be fine. So this is do we need to okay, so right, we use the display layer to basically pass it to the card sprite group change layer method. I see. That makes sense. So we do have to call the setter. I was gonna say, like, could we just bypass the setter and update the internal? But we actually have to do it through the setter for it to function correctly. So this would get run on the client side and the server side, because this is inside of dir check receive. So we might need a lock here. It depends. It depends if, okay, so card movement, this is only going to be run on the client side. Same thing with this, all this is only client side, because this is associated with visual card updates, and we already verified we don't run any of this on the server side, right? Isn't that true? Yeah, card movement, visual deck, all this is only run on the client side. So we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. This, we don't need to lock any of this stuff. Round reset. Okay, so we would need to lock this. Yeah, because this is main thread, server side. We also modify it in the client thread, so that could happen simultaneously. So if we put a lock in the getter and the setter, it would fix that issue. So we do need to put the lock acquisition in the getter and the setter, but only for, it's literally just this one location. So the only places we would actually use the lock is here, and then in where else? In which one? In dir check. So what we'll do is we'll go all the way up to this, to the setter here. Alright, and we just have to add just like we did before. So good thing we checked this, right? Because technically we would need it for that situation. Realistically, would we need it? Maybe we would, because we do. We only modify it on the main thread in that one location, but we frequently will be modifying it on the client side, which means well, actually we won't be frequently doing that, because that only happens we actually only transfer the display layer whenever we during the draw too. So hold on, wait a second. We might not actually need this. If the only time that it's used is on main, if the only time that it's modified or accessed on the main thread is that one line during round reset, and if the only other time well, no, because we still would use the setter, right? Whenever we... But it's derivatively set. Like... I'm having trouble understanding this, I'm not gonna lie. Like, all... Okay, so... Display layer is set whenever a card is moved. But... display layer, the setting of display layer is derivative. The only time that it's not derivative of like an append or a pop is whenever we do like the draw animation, which is at the very beginning of the game. Yeah, this one's a little bit complicated because of the way that it's set. It's different than most other attributes. Okay. So it is set in dir check receive through the setter though. But that's only when card group data is transferred, and card group data is only transferred very rarely. That's only during the draw animation and stuff. There's no other place in the game where card group data. See, because this is derivative. This display layer, like, wouldn't need a lock because this would only get run on the client side. So, same here, same here, same here, same here. All this doesn't need a lock. Same here. The only one that would need the lock is, so you see here we have data transfer set to true, and then we change the display layer And then um, so this happens in round reset. So technically, if we received through dir check at the same time that we run this line, that could result in a race condition. But what I'm saying is the only time that we actually use the data transfer for the display layer is whenever data transfer is set to true. And the only time that data transfer is set to true is during the draw animation, which is at the very beginning of the game, and then here. I think this is the only other location in the entire game. So let me check that. Let's go to regression. Let's see data transfer equals. So it's set to true, and then it's set to true. Yeah, two places. Once here in round reset, and then once here in the draw 2 for the draw animation. So then that raises the question of, okay, so with that in mind, do we actually need to lock it? I'm not sure we do need to lock it, because the draw animation happens server side. It's going to transfer all the data to the client side. But I was thinking, so whenever it does the data transfer, it passes it to a skeleton form. So it's not actually going to be handling the actual display layer attribute on the main thread and the client thread on the sending side. It would only be accessed on the main thread, and then the skeleton data gets extracted and handled on the client thread to be transferred. And then client side transfer, we don't have to worry about. It gets received over there. And then on the client side, it's never gonna send back the data for the display layer and stuff. It's not gonna do that back to the server, because the server doesn't need that information. First of all, the client needs that information. If that makes sense. So for the draw 2 section, which is the draw animation section, we don't need a lock. And then the other one, which is right in round reset, we also wouldn't need the lock, because we're not actually transferring that data from the client side. It's really only a server side to client side transfer for this. Yeah. So Yeah, I don't think we would need it. Don't think we would need a lock for data for the display layer. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I'm pretty sure we're right on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, we don't need a lock for display layer. That took a while, but now I'm like pretty positive, and I'll put this right here. Say 1, 2, 3, 4 verified. Not race condition prone. Forgot to post it. It's whatever. It's really for me, but you know, hey, if people watch it, you know, that's cool too. Alright, so yeah, we verified that it's not race condition prone there. So now we can check for X as well. I think we're gonna have to change that to be .x. So those are temp files, we don't have to check those. Alright, so I think X is gonna be the same thing. Now, you know what? It does apply to accessing as well, not just modification. But the display layer like wasn't even accessed on the server side, so we're good on that. Now this update function, that's only run client side, we verified that, so we don't have to worry about any of this. This is in dir check receive. This is the same scenario as display layer, not at risk. This is locations. This is all going to be derivative of client-side operations. This is not going to be executed on the server side at all, so we're safe through all this. Then we have, there goes my back again. Return draw card. And this is going to be only a client side to server side execution. This is not going to have anything to do with the client side is not going to be transferring the XY display layer data over to the server side. So that means the client thread is not going to handle it, which means there's not going to be a race condition between the main thread and the client thread. So we can literally bypass, like we don't need a lock here. We don't need a lock for X for this. And this is around reset. This is the same thing as the display layer we covered. And then old features, etc. We don't have to worry about that. This is just text files and stuff that we worked on. Okay. So yeah, we don't need it for X, and that means we don't need it for Y because they go hand in hand with each other. So that was not so bad because we did like 3 birds with 1 stone right there, because display layer logic is the exact same as X and Y logic. So none of these 3 transferred card attributes need to have they're not race condition prone. So we'll just put done for card. Now we're going to go to the next one, which is client. So let's go over here and open up client, exit out of card, and we only have 2 transferred adders, and we needed 4 spaces between this. 1, 2, 3, 4. This needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. And the ID and the change attribute list, those do not need. Well, change attribute list already has a lock. Yeah, because this adder is just a pointer to the actual change attribute list object, where it's actually a copy, so we don't actually transfer this. Well, we do transfer it, but we don't receive it from the client side, so we don't actually this one we don't need a lock for this one. We only need a lock for the actual changed attribute list. So whenever, let's look for self change attribute list, because that's what we really are talking about here. Is that really the only time? Data review, 99% sure we don't need, leaving until 100% sure. So we don't even actually use this attribute. So we only have to look for this. This is used everywhere, but it's used in an indirect way. It doesn't use the actual, like, the attribute called change attribute list is not the same as the actual changed attribute list that is used throughout like a bunch of other files for data transfer, where it's 2 separate objects. Receive change attribute list. So this is all different stuff. This is the one we're looking for, and see, we use this namespace a lot because it's the name of a module, which is, it's the name of a file. It's also the name of this attribute. It's used throughout the project. It's one of the most like important things in the project. But none of this is actually referencing the attribute that I'm looking for, the client attribute. Yeah, all this is okay. Here we go. We actually do reference it right here. So we have current client change attribute list. So it's accessed not through the self, but through current client. So this actually might need a lock. Let's see. We make the current client change attribute list a copy of the actual C1. Okay. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna need a lock for this because it's not modified on the client side in such a way that when it's transferred back to the server side, we are accessing the same object. Like when the change attribute list gets transferred from the client side to the server side, it's not transferring that actual list and then accessing it on the client thread server side. It's only going to access the data inside of it in a skeleton format, and then it's going to apply the data to those specific attributes. It's not going to actually access that client's change attribute list attribute. It's not going to access that. It's a different, it doesn't work that way. And if that's the case, then that means the main thread well, the client thread does handle it. This right here, this operation, current client change attribute list equals C1 change attribute list copy, that is a client thread operation. Well, actually it's not. No, this is not true, because this is the client file. This isn't even inside a dir check. Is it? It's not. Yeah, this is the main while loop. Yeah, so we don't need a lock for this. Yeah, we definitely don't need a lock for this. Let me just triple check, keep going real quick and look. Yeah, so all this right here is only client side stuff. Change attribute list sources. Yeah. The only place I would check is server. The last place I would check. And it's not gonna use it. I already know. Yeah, this is, we don't need a lock for it. Definitely not. Okay, see this? Current client change attribute list copy in the threaded client. Yeah, but we never will handle it. So we actually do handle it. On the client thread, but the main thread is not going to compete for it because there's no process on the main thread that would access it. Yeah, because it ends up being a copy. See? It's not a reference to an actual attribute list, and the main thread appends to the actual change attribute list. So it's just like skeleton and non-skeleton attribute relationship. This current client change attribute list is basically a skeleton form of the actual change attribute list, such that we don't need a lock for it, we need a lock for the actual change attribute list, which we already have that implemented. So yeah, we're good. No lock needed for this. So we will do Control Shift F, backspace, go over to things to do, and client, we're going to say client is done because the only two attributes that are transferred are change attribute list and ID. Yeah. So we're going to say verified not race condition prone. For an ID is going to be the same. ID is, I don't even need to look up ID. Like, I've never had an issue with ID. It's definitely not a problem. It's only set at the very beginning of the game. It is accessed, but it never changes, so there's no reason for like a race condition because it's not changed. It's basically a constant throughout the entire project. Alright, so client is done. Now let's do custom append list. Let's open it up. Here. Alright, let's go to the top and see what transferred adders. Okay, so none of them are transferred, so that was easy. None of them are transferred. Let me just triple check and make sure that's true. Pretty sure it is. So card group name dict, change attribute list, mug group name to player, ref list to, yeah, none of this stuff needs to be transferred. Yep, that's true. Alright, so custom append list is done. Easy. Next one, custom time list. Probably going to be the same. Let's go to the top. Transferred adders, none. Non-transfer adders, change attribute list and name. Same thing here. Doesn't need to be locked, certainly. Okay, then we have deck. So let's go open up deck. Put deck over here. And we will have our 3 transferred adders, which are deck, discard pile, and prior face-up discard. That's the only 3 that we transfer. I thought we transferred more than that. So we don't transfer any of these. Alright, yeah, that actually looks good. That's accurate, I think. So deck, that's gonna be one we need to review. So this is gonna be dot deck actually. Add a ref dict, master deck. Okay, so this is in dir check. What is this? Receive? Yeah, dir check receive, and this does access it. So if it's also accessed on the main thread, the 3 requisites are: is it modified on the client side? And if it's modified on the client side, that means it is handled by dir check receive. So if it's handled, well, no, that's not actually true, because dir check receive works the other way. It works for when client is receiving from server, so that's not actually true. So I know that main thread modifies master deck, which means this dir check receive will apply at the very least to the client side receiving it, which means it's not technically a race condition prone situation unless it works the other way, where the client side is sending it to the server. So we need to figure out if that's the case ever. Now this is the append function. Oh, this might be. If this happens on the if this happens on the client thread, then this could be a race condition situation. So really the question at this point is the deck modified on the client side? I don't think it is. I don't see anything that shows that it would be modified client side. So yeah, all this progression is going to be client side. We have setup. This happens at the very earliest stage of the game. This is actually before data transfer. So yeah, this is prior to data transfer. Do those. Let me just review the top ones real quick. Yeah, so is it modified client side? And I don't think it is. That's all that matters right now. The draw animation. So this gets transferred. This happens server side, and then it gets transferred to the client side, but it doesn't get transferred back over. So yeah, we don't need a lock verified. All right, so that one's done. So let's go here and we can verify. Verified, not race condition from. And then we have these gotta write something down, just remembered. Alright. Discard pile. Let's check that one. Alright, so this is dirt check receive. So that's main thread handled. And client, either client or client and main thread. So the question again is it going to be modified from the client side in such a way that it gets transferred over the network? and it's not. This is all server side is going to be transferred to the client side, but there's no indication that it would be modified on the client side. Just go past all this stuff. This is all server side. Okay, setup. That's just assignment, not modification. Yeah, we're good. Alright, so this one's done as well. Can close this out. Discard file, same thing. Verified, not race condition prone. And then the last one is going to be prior face up discard. Didn't work. So again, we're going to be asking the same question. Is it modified client side? So it doesn't matter if it's modified server side and handled by both threads in that sense, because it's not actually going to be handled by both threads. It's going to be handled by the main thread, turned into skeleton data, and then the client thread is going to handle that skeleton data. There isn't going to be a handling of the actual object on the client thread unless it's received from the client side, wherein the client thread applies that data using the setter to set the attribute, and that could result in a race condition. But if it's not set from the client side, we're safe. And this is all progression, so we don't have to worry about any of that. And yep, alright, so we're good on that one too. We don't have to transfer it. I mean, we don't have to lock it. So let's put that there. Alright. So we're done with that. Let's go back over here. Deck. So the deck is done. Go back to double check, see if they're modified through event handler, draw window main again. Because I previously assumed since those only ran CS, they would be considered shared, but actually they would be. This is because they are accessed and also modified. Transfer to CS. Okay, yeah, we're not at risk there. So this one's done. Game is done. Alright, next is locations. It's kind of funny. I've been looking at my timer. I'm like, man, the timer hasn't seemed to change in a while. It seems like the timer's going by slow. Well, I forgot to restart the timer, so it's been at the same time for like 15 minutes. It's kind of funny. Yeah, buddy. So we have locations up next. No attributes are transferred, so we don't have to worry about this one, so that one's done. But let me just not trust that and check it myself. So all these non-transferred adders. Yep, all that's good. So locations is also done. Network is next. None of those are transferred. That one's done. Now player. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. So we have hand, melds, name, play cards, freeze play cards, red 3 melds, skeleton, draw a card. So the hand, we definitely need to check that one for sure. Damn, we're almost at the 2 hour mark. Okay, so I actually have 10 more minutes before break. So the question again is it modified on the client side? Because server side, main thread modifies it, then it gets skeletonized, client thread grabs it, sends it. But if client side receives it, which means client side has to modify it, then when it gets received through client thread, it's gonna be handled on the main thread. I mean the client thread and the main thread, which means it would be race condition prone. So that's what we have to check for, is it modified on the client side. Custom append list. This is the append function. Okay, this actually would modify it. Yeah, this would modify it through the card group. Like in indirect namespace, it doesn't explicitly say append to the hand, but this is, well, this doesn't necessarily prove though that it's handled client side, modified client side, because this applies to both client side and server side. They both use this set of code, and I know it's done on the server side, but that doesn't really matter. So we can just blast through all this. Same thing for pop, clear, all that. We don't have to worry about this. Now custom time list, that doesn't actually use it. Deck doesn't actually use it. Game, so many hand instances, and none of them are the actual hand. That is. And so this is accessed on the client side, obviously, but it's not modified so far. And that's all that matters. We can find a place where it's modified. Nothing. Yeah, nothing so far. This is checking, and this would happen on client side, but not modification. So this is checking, not modification. Now this would only be run client side. It's not going to be run on the servers. Well, so if it's run on the client side though, and it gets transferred, but this is derivative of append. So I think we're safe so far as well. Alright, and this is all progression. Obviously we modify the hand a bunch of times in progression, but that's all server side, so we don't have to worry about that. Just blast through all this code. Damn, that's a lot. Okay. We get it. It's modified a lot on progression. Christ, dude. Okay, here we go. Server. That's just assignment. This is in setup. Yeah, there we go. We're done. Nothing that I saw would dictate us needing a lock for the hand. Yep. So we're done with that. That was the worst one. And then so we can put 1, 2, 3, 4, verify, not race condition prone. And then we have to check the rest of these. This. Actually, I can copy this and the 4 spaces, and then just go boom, 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 boom. Control V. There we go. Cool. So let's do melds. I don't really feel like doing this. This is getting old. I'm ready to do something different, but I don't really have like. I have to do this. 3 more minutes till break. 3 minutes. All right. Let's do melds. Let's just get it done, so then I don't have to wonder. I can know, hey, I did this. I checked everything. I made sure that. Is it modified on the client side? That's the question. If the melds isn't modified on the client side, it doesn't matter if it's modified on the server side, because server side main thread modification doesn't imply client thread simultaneous access, because it handles the skeleton version. The skeleton version gets transferred. Only if it's client side modified, which means it's transferred, and then main client thread modifies the actual when receiving. That's an important distinction to make, because that helps me be able to rule out a lot of code. I can just pretty much like skim past most of this stuff without like even having to think about it. I can just look at it for a split second and I can tell you if it's a visual meld update. Okay, so this is Yeah, this is inconsequential. That stuff's inconsequential. That's location. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not it's modified client side. Non-maxed out nodes, that's a different group. So this is only accessing, and now we're in progression. We don't have to worry about any of these. We can just fly through this. Too much good. Alright, setup. This is just custom append list assignments, no modification. It's old features. Alright, so we're done. We don't have to worry about it. Cool. Go back over here. Melds, verified, not race condition prone. And name. That one is not going to be. I'm not even going to check that one. I don't want to be lazy. I'll check it anyway, whatever. So I'm going to take my little break real quick. 208, yeah. So let's hit here, break at 324. Alright, so I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, back. Setting my timer again. I'm gonna do at least one more hour. Alright. Whoops. Alright, so we're at name. We're checking that. Well, and this is the player name. So this has to be distinguished from a lot of other names. And we can do caps to rule out some of those. Hold on. I don't even think I need to go through all this shit. For this one, I think I could just do self name equals name. Name is assigned when we create it, but that's a placeholder name. So the name is actually only assigned in player enter name through progression, which is server side main thread. That's it. Yeah, that's all we have to check. There's no other place. If it's not modified on the client side, that's point blank period, the end. We don't need to check any further. So that was a lot easier. I'm glad I realized that. My brain works a little bit sometimes. So play cards. And I think I can even narrow this down even further for these card groups. So yeah, it all boils down to client-side modification. So that means we only have to search in files that would do client-side modification, which is, well, lots of them are, so many of them are shared on both the client side and the server side. They all share the same like files, so it's safer to just do it like this. It takes a little bit longer, but the time difference is really not very different. We're looking for client side modification, so any sort of operation done on them. So we can just fly through most of these. Yeah, it's really not so bad. The pain pill has helped my back. But like if I bend over, it hurts really bad. I don't know if it's dislocated. I mean, I did get adjustments, and I would have thought that an adjustment would, you know, have helped with that. But honestly, I felt like the adjustment made the pain worse. So that made me lean towards like maybe some sort of muscle sprain, a tendon injury, a ligament, you know what I'm saying? Like something, the x-ray didn't show a fracture or break. At least that's what the doctor at the chiro didn't see any. I mean, he is a chiropractor, but he's a doctor. He's an actual doctor, I'm pretty sure. He's not like a pseudo doctor, he's actually a doctor. Alright, so this is visual meld update. We already went through this. This is going to this is a derivative operation. I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I don't really think any of these card groups are modified on the client side, and that's all that matters, dude. This is all progression. We're just gonna skip it. I have about 100 references to it in that file. Okay, so next to setup, this is assignments. Blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about it. Yep. So we're safe on this one as well. I'm proud of myself though for checking this stuff, because I could just have said fuck it and not checked it. I could have just said I'm not gonna check it. Pre-sort play cards. So same thing here. I like the voice in the background there. So progression, we're already to progression. We can skip these. Setup, assignments. Yep, we're done with that one. That was fast. Cool. Red 3 meld, let's check it. All progression. Setup, don't have to worry about it. Alright, old features, we're done here. Easy. Easy. Alright, skeleton draw card. Last one. There goes my back. Okay. Like if I just move a little bit, I just have to like just don't move, like at all. Well, that was easy. Well, this can't be right. It's gotta be a... Oh, right. We need to look up the actual draw card, not the skeleton. Coding is not easy, bro. Coding is really not easy. When you really get into developing a program, it's hard. It is so hard. And honestly, I couldn't imagine working with someone else's code on a big project like this. I would have like terrible anxiety with that. Like other people's code, I'm so OCD about. Okay, so this is modification, but that's progression. I'm so like OCD about how I implement my code. I couldn't imagine working with some like animal that just doesn't care about optimizing his code perfectly, you know? I wouldn't like that. But that's what you have to do. You have to work with other people's trash code or code that's really good and way better than yours that you might not understand, you know? So we're done here. Easy money. Alright, so that's it for player. Let's go back over to things to do. And player is done. So we reviewed the adders to determine it. We triple check to see if they're modified through event handler. Draw window main again. Now we did that. Player is now done, and then server is gonna be our last one. And then we're done with this task. This was a big task. Transfer to adders, none. So look at that. Just like that, we're done. Boom. Great. Whoops. So triple check for shared object adder access modification via indirect namespaces. So we already yeah, and that hinges on client-side modification. So we don't even have to check that if we know there's not client-side modification, and since we verified that there isn't, we know that we're safe there. So this can all go away. Alright, we're done. We reviewed all of our objects to determine whether they are shared or not. We did it, dude. I'm so happy to be done with that. That was an excursion, and I'll just put finished. Oh, I forgot to turn my light back on. Oh, you thought you would never see me again, did you? You thought you would never see me again, did you? Right. Review objects shared or not. We finished reviewing all objects adders to determine if they are shared. Need locks. Done. Alright, now let's do a little test to make sure we didn't break anything. So let's crank the script up. Server, run the client, and the other one. He's gonna be J, he's gonna be M. Your name must be at least one character long, really? Did I not enter his name? I've never seen that happen before, ever. I'm pretty sure you know what? Let me try this again. I'm paranoid now. Hold up. Let me make sure I didn't fudge anything up here. J M Oh, it is bugged. Why is it doing that? That's strange. Weird. Let me do it again. See if it happens every time. And it happened 3 out of 3. Okay, so let's check this out. This is one of the clients. Okay, so M is client 2, or M is player 1. So this should be client 2. So client 2 is the one that's bugging out. So we can kill the script and then look over here, because this should be client 2. And let's look at our output in the console. So we have setup, create double deck. We send, or no, we receive the draw one. Then we receive what is your name and text input active true. Then we send out the name that we put, which was J. Okay, it's hard to read. Then we receive, sorry, but your name must be at least one character long. Okay, so this has got to be associated with the input text final or the text input active, because we implemented locks for that, remember? Let's look through here and see if we and you know what? I need to change custom logger back to not print but to log, because that can mess up the way the game operates. I only do that in emergency situations. So let's try with the logging back to log after the fact, not printing to the console as the game progresses. Okay, and it still has that bug. Alright, so let's look again and see what we have in the console. Alright, what is your name? Okay, we put in J, and then sorry, but your name must be at least one character long. It looks like your input was blank. Hit enter to try again. So this is strange. So text input active and input text final. Let's control shift F that. Text final self input text. And can I use the internal use for this? Yeah, I could use, because we run the setter already. This is not gonna, so that's safer. That means I don't have to access it twice in a row. Is this that old bug? Not 100% sure, but I thought we fixed this bug. I have to check input text final first. Issue here is that text input active is transferred before input text final is. So enters this section errantly. If they finished typing their name and hit enter, and if their name was at least one character. But if it enters into this by, so text input active gets transferred first, so it says if game object text input active is equal to false, and then it checks the length of input text final, but input text final is not transferred yet. So then it will go to the else. Well, then it goes to this if right here, which says acquire, and then we have releasing of these two. Okay. So it's errantly entering, so it is this old bug, but that's weird because why wouldn't the bug have like shown itself until we implemented this lock? Like it never happened. Strange behavior. So then we have progression text. Sorry, but your name must be at least one character long. Looks as if your input was blank. So it's errantly entering into this, and we can verify this if text input active is transferred first. So let's look right here. So we have text input active is transferred first. So it gets processed before input text final. Okay. So wait a second. So let's break this down here. So what's happening is, since we implemented the lock, I think since text input active gets transferred immediately, it gets transferred so fast that it gets sent in the same packet, which is very fast. But in the little bit of time between the client thread applying text input active and then applying input text final, this clause on the main thread gets checked, and this is set to false because it got processed first. This data is in the wings. It's about to get processed on the client thread, but it didn't. This is like we're talking about microseconds here. This is like a microsecond type problem. This is a very minuscule time span. That's what's so hard about debugging this sort of stuff. It goes up in microseconds, milliseconds, and shit. Nanoseconds even. So the lock is actually exposing the bug. It's basically showing that this logic here is not secure. So what we need to do is, so what we could we basically just have to modify this. We could add in sleep. We could add in a short sleep, a short sleep to fix the bug. Or we could make it to where, and this is going to be option 2, this would be move input text final check inside this indentation level, using a while loop. So the while loop will act as a security to make sure that until the input text final also gets processed, because we know they come hand in hand, and we know the issue is a microsecond check here. So we have to verify that we're not going to move forward until game object input text final is greater than 0. And using the sleep is like easier. Like I don't really like using while loops. While loops block while loops, but sleep is the same thing. Sleep is it is a timed while loop. It's a while loop that's timed, as to where the actual while condition clause will wait only until it has that proper data, and only then will it move on. As to where the sleep is arbitrary and has no bearing on how long it will actually take to process this input text final. So we can't use the sleep. We'll have to use this option, and I have to use the restaurant, and I think we're gonna use that, but I'll be back. almost done. I'm just gonna do probably this last little half hour and call it quits. So, where were we? Totally forgot. Move input text final, check inside this indentation level using a while loop. Okay. Yeah, and that would totally fix it, I think. So what we'll do is copy this real quick. False. Okay. Then we're gonna enter into this section which says while the length of the game object input text final is equal to 0, because initially it'll be 0, right? Try that again. Initially it should be set to 0. Yeah, the length of it is nothing. And then it's reset back to 0. Well, no, it's not reset. So I don't know about this. I mean, it'll fix it, but I don't really like it. You know what I mean? Why is all this other stuff? All right. So this should fix it though, because it checks text input active, and then it will say while the length of the game object text input final is equal to 0, which means while it has yet to process the input text final. Yeah, we would just pass right here. We'd say pass. So while the length of the game object's input text final is equal to 0, we will pass. Okay. And if it's already not equal to 0, which means if it's already been processed once it hits this, then it should but we also have to make sure that, well, we know that if it makes it past this, then the input text final has been changed. So once it gets past this while loop, we know it's been changed. But what about other instances wherein we enter this section? Like, what about if the input text final is not equal to 0 and we enter into this function again? Let's see. So we have, where is this called? So let's run through the rest of this. So we have, if text input active is equal to false, while the length of it is equal to 0, we pass. We could use like a prior attribute thing to check if it's equal to the prior. But I'm pretty sure this would work as long as the input text final, like if this gets entered into again and uses an errant reference to input text final that is not equal to 0 but does not actually signify that we've received the new one, this would be bugged code. But if the input text final is if we never enter into this section in such a circumstance, then we don't have to worry about it. So let's just go through the rest of it. So we assign name to input text final, release the lock, we transfer the data, we change enter name bool to true. Okay. And then, in the case of else, player entered bool, that determines whether or not we run the it won't run this function again. So let me put this comment here that says, while the input text final is still being processed by client thread dircheck receive. Since these two adders come together when the client side enters their name. Must have while loop here to allow time to process this adder. Waiting for client thread to finish processing. Receives input text file. Alright. And this means if the client has hit enter after typing their name, client will have sent this adder along with input text active, which is checked below. Okay, so now we just have to verify that no other condition conflicts with this, wherein this function might get recalled. So if game object text input active is equal to false, and this needs to be changed as well. Ah, okay, I see. So yeah, this wouldn't work actually. It's bugged. Because in the case that they actually didn't have an input text final of at least we know what we could do. No, we have to check text input active first. We have to check that one first. If we checked input text final first, we might have to use a sleep. That might be the only way to fix this. Because if we don't use sleep, yeah, this is just not going to work. And either way, even if we checked a prior version of this, it would be equal to the prior. So like, I know what we could do. We could change the initial assignment to input text final to be something other than a blank slate, so that we would check equality with that value. So we could say if text input active is equal to false and game object input text final is not equal to the initial set value, okay, I'm figuring this out. I'm figuring it out. Or we could just say if text input active is equal to false and input text final not equal to an empty slate, meaning if they hit enter and then the input text final is not equal to an empty slate, then that means as long as the initial value is not an empty slate, well, but then that would errantly enter into the, it's a little bit more difficult. It's a puzzle. This is difficult. So if we did and input text final not equal to starting value and text input active not equal to blank slate, that means it has been changed from the initial value and it hasn't been changed to a blank slate. I think that would work because we have to take into account the else, the other if down here, which would check, let's say they did enter their name and they entered it with a blank slate. They didn't input any character. It would not enter into this one because the if text input active would be false, but it would find equality with a blank slate, so it wouldn't enter this. Then it would go down here and it would say text input active is equal to false, and input text final is not equal to starting value, and input text final is equal to a blank slate, then we could enter into this. And that I think would guarantee, because that would cover the case where in those few microseconds the input text final hasn't been processed yet. So in that case, in the interim, while input text final is still being processed by the client thread, this clause would check for that to say, okay, is the input text final equal to the original value? If it is, then we know that signifies it's still in that interim period. And then in the case that it's not in that interim period, the input text final has actually been processed, we would check equality with a blank slate, which means they didn't put any character. That would give us security for this section. And same thing above, if we checked for equality against input text final being equal to the beginning value and against a blank slate, as long as it's not either of those two, and input text active is equal to false, if all three of those conditions are met, then we know we can continue with this section. So I think that's what we'll do. Yeah. So let's get rid of that. And then we'll do the and. We'll say and game object input text final is not equal to initial value, whatever that's going to be, and then and game object dot input text final is not equal to blank slate. Then well, I need to verify that. We could just say and the length, because I don't know if it comes through as like that or that, and that's a question I need to ask. Is a string of blank is a string of blank characters, does it have a length? So let's go right here to our test segment. back, man. Where are we at here? All right. What are we doing? Okay, so we're gonna make s equal to our string that's empty, but it's got a bunch of spaces. Now we're gonna print the length of that of s. Okay, so it does have a length, and that's important. That's really important. Empty string spaces, empty string with spaces has len rule. Reminder that a string with only spaces does have a length of x num of spaces. Yeah, very important. Okay. So now we can I know how we can test it. We can test it with the gameplay. We can kill this terminal. We'll go back over here and we will I have to fix this first. So let's assign the input text final for game to be dot input text final equals. Alright, so we'll just call it initial value. Is not equal to initial value, and now we have to determine if it's not equal to, is it a blank string with no empty characters, or does it have empty characters? So let's review this. Text input active is false. Input text final is not equal to initial value. Input text final is not equal to a blank slate. And then we go to here. If text input active is not equal to false, and the text input active final is not equal to the initial value, input text final is not equal to initial value, and wait, what the hell? If game object is not equal to in-game is not equal to, I repeated myself there. So text input active equal to false, and input text final is not equal to initial value, and game object is not equal to, or rather is equal to an empty slate. Yeah, so let's review that. If it's text input active is false, if input text final is not equal to initial value, meaning we have changed it from its initial value, meaning it's not still being processed, and the input text final is equal to the empty slate, that guarantees, I think, that what we want to happen will happen. And then up here, text active is false. It's not equal to initial value, which means it's not in that interim period. and the text input final is not equal to a blank slate. So it's been changed, it's been processed, it's not an empty slate. Granted that this is what is actually returned when we don't enter anything in. So that's the last thing we have to test. So let's do that, run the client here. And we're just gonna put an empty slate. Oh, it crashed. Oh, line 56. I left the... Wait, what? But I removed the... Wait, what? That's weird. I have autosave up, but that was as if I didn't autosave. Let's try this again. Oh, I see. It crashed here. Input text final. Game object has no attribute input text final. Ah, okay, so I changed that to be... Is that the one that I changed to be a... No, it's not. It's not a calculated property. Oh, I see what I did. I assumed that it was a calculated property, but it's not. So... $10.44 in game. How did that not show up? Oh, there it is. I just didn't see it. Gotcha. Alright, I see what that... Simple, very simple bug. Alright, there we go. Let's try this again. And we're checking to see if the empty slate... It doesn't even let me hit enter. Really? Wait, did it send to the wrong client? Hold up, dude. Okay, no, it's sent to the right client. Alright, so now we'll close it, kill the script, and let's see, what did we sent, okay, the input text final was this, with no spaces. So that's what we have to check for. So this is the correct string. Same thing here. So let's copy this comment and put it up here. and we're gonna modify it. If they hit enter and the transferred input text file has been processed by client the check receive section, and they did type at least one character for their name. There we go. So this, guys, should fix it. And let me make sure that initial value is what we have. And it is. Okay. So this should finish it up. This should do it. This section should be completely logical. It should not have any issues with it. Text input active. Text file. Alright, yeah, so let's test it and see if it's fixed, and then I'm going to call it quits. So J, it's going to be M. Okay, there it goes. Well, alright, cool. Why is it... Am I tripping here? Well... That part's fixed, but... The way that the enter continue text active is going on, it's funny. It's acting strange. The way that the progression text progresses is odd. And that's because of the online nature with the data transfer. It's so hard to get that to get it right, dude. So now he's prepared to play. Okay, he's hitting enter. Still showing what is your name. Now prepared. Okay. And then waiting on the player to enter the name. See, it shouldn't actually say that anymore. That's because of the delay. That's because of that delay we have. I might need to reduce that delay a little bit. I think it's actually causing a little bit of bug here. It is actually. So the delay might need to get reduced a bit. Alright, yeah, I'm done. Yeah, it's working. So, we're done. Pretty good progress. Decent, not amazing. I can live with it. So, we'll put this in devlog that we... found and fixed a logic flaw in ProgPy. These earliest section related to player name assignment. Tested and verified. Fixed. Also tested all the changes we made to the lock system to ensure we didn't break the game. The test went well. And then we're gonna stage and commit and push our changes. So this is gonna be from 450 to 452. So let's put our time that we finished at 4:52. So that's 3 hours. Is that right? Is it that long? 3 hours, 3.5 hours. Yeah. 3 hours and 36. That's right. Damn. Okay, so 3.5 hours. We did. That's pretty good. So we're gonna cd out using dot slash dot. Now we're at the root of the project directory. We're gonna do git branch to make sure we're on the right branch, and we are on secondary. We're gonna do git add to add everything that we modified. Well, it adds everything, even the stuff we did modify actually. Now you do git commit -m to make our commit, and double quotes, paste in our devlog. Well, it looks like we have a double quote in our devlog message, so we have to get rid of that. Now we can hit enter to commit. It successfully committed. 18 files changed, 105 insertions, 112 deletions. Now we'll do git push Canasta secondary to push to the remote repository, to the cloud, and there it went. Alright, get out of that. And last thing is to go to programming, projects, Canasta, copy this one, go to the backup, delete the old one, and paste it. Alright, now we enter into it, go into devlog, go to the very end, 10/6/24, that is today, so we know we did right. And now we can change the title of this folder to reflect today's date, which is the last time we made a backup, and that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.